You sometimes wonder, don't you? How am I doing with my mental health? A mental health evaluation in 10 minutes today at Live on Purpose TV. Most of the people who are searching for a mental health evaluation on YouTube are looking for a how-to video because they're a mental health professional or they're a student who's studying something related to the mental health industry. That's not what this video is for. This one is for you because you might be wondering sometimes, am I okay? Am I all right here? Is there something going on in my mental health that I should be aware of? Okay, first of all, it's normal to wonder that. You're probably not as crazy as you feel. That's a good general rule of thumb. However, there are some things you might want to be aware of. And if I were training a graduate student, for example, or I remember back in my clinical training going through a process of evaluating someone's mental health. And there's a few different areas that you can look at that will help you to get a little bit of a sense of where you are. The first one is mood. Now, when we're talking mood, that's typically how you feel. Most people experience this as either happiness or sadness or elation or depression. Now, the word depression in the mental health industry is a diagnosis, but it's also a description of mood, okay? You might ask yourself, when I think about my mood, do I experience mood swings? And what this is, do I experience mood swings, for example? Mood swings are when I'm really up and then I'm really down, and then I'm really up and then I'm really down. That's important to pay attention to. Now, a certain level of mood swinginess is normal, but if this is getting severe, or if you find yourself missing out on certain activities or things that you would normally do, like your work or your family commitments, if it starts to interfere with something, then we would say, okay, this is getting into the area of a mood disturbance. Sometimes mood disturbances can turn into mood disorders. Now, little clarification here. We're not having this conversation for the purpose of diagnosing you, okay? That's not what this is about. It's simply for educational purposes for you to get a little bit of a sense of how you might evaluate yourself so that you'll know if you need to get a little more help. So that's why I want you to look at it. In the mood area still, do I experience significant or prolonged periods of depressed mood for no particular reason? Now, sometimes you'll feel depressed and you know why. Maybe you just went through a really stressful experience. Maybe you lost someone who is a beloved person to you. Maybe you were fired from your job. It's normal to feel those things after something like that occurs. So that's not what we're talking about. We're talking about a prolonged period of depressed mood that seems to just hang in there, and you lose interest in things that you would normally do, and there's no particular reason for it. That's another thing that we want to watch out for. And if you're noticing that, it might be an indicator that there's something you want to look a little deeper into. Now, another aspect of mood is anxiety. Anxiety, typically people experience that as nervousness or fear or apprehension or being worried. Now, the word worried implies that it's part of a normal human experience. We're talking about a level of anxiety or worry or fear or apprehensiveness that is greater than what you would normally expect or that what you normally are used to. You want to watch out for that, especially if it's getting in your way, if it's causing you to avoid certain activities, or if it takes you out of the things that you would normally do in your work or in your family interactions. Okay, so all of the things that I'm sharing with you are normal human experiences. To become a concern in terms of a mental health evaluation, it needs to be prolonged or interfering with your regular functioning or be more severe than you would normally expect. Okay, and it's hard to judge that sometimes because all you know is what your own experience is. But this will give you a sense, I think. Okay, another area that we sometimes look at in a mental health evaluation is physical symptoms. It's so interesting how our mind and body are connected. And when some things are going on in your mind, sometimes that can manifest as physical symptoms. The most common ones that we look for in a mental health assessment tend to be headaches or fatigue or stomach aches. These things tend to show up a little more readily when we are stressed. When we are stressed, our brain triggers the release of certain chemicals into our body, into the bloodstream of our body, that can sometimes cause these kinds of symptoms to emerge without any other particular explanation for why those symptoms are troubling you. So if you're having constant recurring physical symptoms that are not explained by some other medical condition, it may be a connection to mental health. So just be aware of that. Be sensitive to it. Another really common factor in mental health has to do with our reaction to or our response to trauma. Trauma is most correctly defined as a very intense experience where you either experience or directly witness something that is dangerous or life-threatening or sometimes tragic or destructive. Okay, so people who witness a car accident, for example, especially one where there are injuries, that counts as a trauma. Someone who is abused or mistreated by another person, that counts as a trauma. And you can see as I say that there are all different levels of this. People who go to war often experience a traumatic reaction to what they're witnessing there in the war situation. So you get a feeling for where I'm going with this. Now, if you have experienced a trauma, and if you have recurrent and intrusive thoughts and feelings related to that, it's normal to react to those things. I tell my clients sometimes that you're having a normal reaction to an abnormal event. But what we want to watch out for is something that persists over time, especially if you're making efforts to talk about it and deal with it in productive ways, and it still interferes with your concentration or your sleep or your relationships, then that's something we want to pay attention to as well. Now let's go a little different direction. How about your thoughts? Thoughts are really interesting. Can you control what you think? You think you can? Try this. Think about bananas. How you doing? Yeah, it's not too hard, right? You can think of the size, color, shape, taste, texture of bananas. It's not that hard to go bananas. Sorry, that was bad. Anyway, now, for a few moments, do not think about grapefruit. Don't think about grapefruit. You're thinking about grapefruit, aren't you? Those round ones that are sour and they squirt you in the eye when you stick your spoon in them. Can you control your thoughts? Well, yes and no. Thoughts sometimes just come in from nowhere. So we're going to look at that realm of thoughts a little bit. Are my thoughts generally positive? Or do I tend toward more negative, dark thoughts? If you find yourself, for example, thinking persistently about hurting yourself or about suicide or other dark or destructive themes, that may be an indicator that we've got some mental health issues going on. Okay? And without being ashamed of that, just acknowledge, oh yeah, my thoughts tend to go that direction. There's things we can do about that, but just notice it. Okay? Notice also whether your thoughts tend to be pressured or create anxiety for you or are disjointed from what other people seem to be thinking. You don't always know what other people are thinking, but if your thoughts as you express them seem to be way out in left field, then maybe we ought to take a look at this. That's just another area in a mental health assessment. We're going to look at the thoughts. There's other areas, but I think I've given you a pretty good overview. There's one more that I think that deserves mentioning, and it's because it's such a common place where we run into problems with our own mental health, and that has to do with substances. Do you find, for example, that you turn to things like alcohol or caffeine or tobacco or any of the variety of other substances that are out there, some legal, some not, as a strategy for handling stress, for example, or for recreational purposes, or to escape from the responsibilities that you might be feeling in other aspects of your life? Most people who go into treatment for a substance abuse problem don't think it's as big of a problem as people around them think that it is. I'm inviting you to just be really honest with yourself. Okay? Take a look at it. What is your actual use? And are you using these substances in a way that is intended to basically self-medicate for some kind of a mental health issue? Typically depression or stress or anxiety. If you'll be honest with yourself about that, there are all kinds of things that you can do to address it. So I've given you the main areas that we would cover as professionals. We want to know about these areas in a mental health assessment. If you can be honest with yourself and take a look at it, it might lead you in the right direction to take the appropriate steps to help yourself. Okay, all of that wasn't to diagnose you, but hopefully you've got some ideas on things you might want to follow up on. And if you know someone else who would really benefit, please share this episode with them.